Good morning and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our annual press conference in 2019. 2019 here in the Audi Museum Mobile. I would like to welcome everybody who's here in this room, but I would also like to welcome all those who are following our press conference online. You will also have the opportunity, as we just showed you before, the opportunity to ask any questions you might have during the Q&A session. And I would like to welcome the entire Board of Management of Audi AG and our Vice President, Global Marketing and Sales, Mr. Martin Sander, who is responsible for marketing and sales at Audi AG, and he is at the moment responsible for this division. Now let me give you some of the housekeeping remarks. First of all, the language of this meeting is German, and we have translation into English and Chinese. Behind me, you can see the channels, which you should please use for translation. First of all, we will hear Mr. Bram Schott. He will talk about the current situation and give you an outlook. The next speaker will be Alexander Seitz, who will talk about the last year, and he is going to present the key financials. And this will be rounded off by Peter Kössler, who will talk about sustainability. Now, in 2018, and I don't think I'm anticipating too much, 2018 was a year with lots of different challenges, both internal and external challenges. In particular, the significant changes in the political and economic situation. At Audi, we had this very challenging year to cope with, and how we responded and how we want to act in future. This is something you're going to hear now in a moment, because I'm going to hand over immediately to our CEO, Bram Schott. Over to you.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. Everything's okay then? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to all of you to the annual press conference. Now, traditionally, we give you a review of the previous year, that's obvious, but before I start with it, I'd like to invite you to something. The ski jump, Kaipoller, do you still remember it? That was 1986. So the ski jump, we actually drove up our Audi 100. Who remembers it? Who does? Nobody? Oh, come on. I thought I was the youngest here. Apparently not. 47 meters, 77% gradient. That was really something. In 2005, then, we took an A6 to repeat this feat. So, 25 years of Audi Quattro and the two spots. I still remember it. Now, we really wrote advertising history. Now, even if you were born later, after the broadcast, Audi Quattro, the ski jump, I think most people know it. Why do I tell you this? Why do I mention this? I tell you because Audi really has to find its way back to this particular strength. And we are going to do it. Let me say this very clearly. And I don't mean this nostalgically. It's the style and the mental attitude. Because when you hear the name Audi today, some maybe might have a completely different image in their minds. You might think of a crisis right away. And at first glance, last year's figures might seem to indicate that. In 2018, our deliveries decreased by 3.5%. There's some noise here. Thank you. Thank you, Patrick. Give him a hand. Applause for Patrick. So in 2018, our deliveries decreased by 3.5%. 1,812 million cars were delivered to customers, 65,000 fewer than the previous year. The operating return on sales also fell to 6%. Now, this includes some special items. Alexander Seitz will explain this later. From the diesel crisis, a fine of 800 million, among other things that we paid last year. And again, Alexander Seitz will explain this later. Overall, we achieved an operating profit of around 3.5 billion. And compared to the previous year, well, That was 4.7. So we are not satisfied with these figures. But these numbers don't show the whole picture, and that's something that we want to explain. Circumstances were very challenging for us. International crises, severe market fluctuations, all this, of course, affect the entire automotive industry, not just us. At the same time, future topics such as e-mobility, digitalization, and automated driving require high investments. In addition, the following topics affected us at Audi in 2018. Our product initiative, of course, the arrest of Rupert Stadler, WLTP, and continuing to work through the diesel issue. Now, that's what I'd like to address in the following. We launched the biggest launch program in our history in 2018. 20 market launches all in all. That's what we mastered and coped with. Completely new models among them. The Q8, there was an important model change for the A1, for the A6, the A7 and the Q3. And a car that has already made history. The first all-electric E-Tron. With the E-Tron, we opened up a new era for us. It's the first of its kind. And the feedback from the press, the trade press, from our dealers and the customers has been exceptionally overwhelming, phenomenal. The basis for this product initiative, to explain this, was laid by my predecessor, Rupert Stadler. In his more than 11 years at the helm of this company, he made Audi into a global player. And we are not going to forget this. Now, the changeover to the new WLTP test cycle in 2018 caused us particular difficulties. That's obvious, because unlike our competitors, I must say we were less well prepared. That's obvious. And there's something else that there were quite a few jobs also to be done with the diesel crisis. We went through this. WLTP, however, did not only lead to gaps in our product portfolio, but we also had shift cancellations. And to be quite honest, in particular in production, we expected a lot of our people. But in all areas, Audi employees showed great commitment in 2018. That's obvious as well. My colleagues on the Board of Management and I are well aware that we have an exceptional team that really performs outstandingly. And on behalf of the entire Board of Management, I would like to thank this team for their great performance last year. And as Niki Lauda says, I'll take my hat off to them. Congratulations. Chapeau. This is also why last year, again, or for last year, there is the profit-sharing bonus for a skilled worker at the plants in Germany. It's 3,630 euros. And the fine, and let me make this very clear, does not affect the employee's bonus. And there are also profit-sharing arrangements at the Audi subsidiaries. Thanks to our strong team, and I really mean it, we have made good progress with the changeover to WLTP. So 2018, there's been a lot of change. By the end of the month, we will have a general operating permit again for all of our engine transmission variants, and our customers can then choose from the entire portfolio in the car configurator. And we're also making progress in the area of diesel. In Europe, we were able to start 4 recalls of our 6-cylinder engines, and this represents more than 2/3 of the total volume affected. In the United States, we have progressed even further. There, we already fulfilled the requirements of the settlement. We have already retrofitted or taken back more than 85% of the cars affected, and we will continue to process the remaining cases systematically. Diesel, of course, continues to have top priority. We have worked tirelessly on complete clarification, and in each case, we are waiting for the feedback from the authorities on the individual technical issues. The clarification of legal issues, especially the processing of the pending civil proceedings, will continue to take more time. We all agree here at Audi that something like the diesel crisis, it should never have happened. And it will never, ever happen again. And I say this very clearly, never again. As a company, we are aware of our responsibility and have taken appropriate measures. For example, we have separated certifications from technical development, strengthened the multi-person check principle, and tightened documentation requirements. Well, if you ask me, and many people do that, was 2018 a lost year for Audi? Well, my answer is very clear, not at all. I'm extremely proud of our team. Proud CEO because our employees fought hard for our company. And we've learned from our mistakes and we draw the right conclusions. Audi has grown rapidly in the past and still, and some processes in the company have not grown fast enough along with that. That's also obvious. What does that mean now for 2019? This year will be a year of transition, 2019, a year in which we tackle things, where we make changes and where we are going to improve the situation. WLTP's second act will once again be a feat of strength for us, but this time we are well prepared. We have reduced the number of engine transmission variants by 30%, decreased the complexity. The test bench capacity has been increased by 30%, and we actually added 300 more employees for homologation. Nonetheless, it is clear that despite these measures, WLTP will be a challenge for us, same as the market environment in 2019. Another factor in 2019, well, we will start the second phase of our product initiative. And once more, we have more than 20 market launches. 20. And we focus, of course, again on electrification, and we will continue to strengthen our top-of-the-line upper class and will launch numerous high-performance models. There are many newcomers at the same time, and that requires quite a bit of effort, that's obvious. And we also do everything in order to accelerate the transformation massively. And here, Mr. Klotz, Mr. Moss. So I've seen them here. We have intensive and constructive discussions with the employee representatives. We want to change this company together fundamentally with the Works Council for the better. And Larry Thompson. Larry, good morning. And his monitoring team are helping us in this process. We are very grateful to you for your support. Thank you, Larry. We have revised our code of conduct, the principles of our actions. Integrity is at the top of the list. This is obvious. Ethically and legally impeccable conduct. We are also strengthening this behavior with a group-wide Together for Integrity program. And we are working on our corporate culture. At Audi, we want problems to be addressed openly. That's obvious. And our employees are to have scope for action. And we want to focus on value-oriented action. Our employees want to be proud again and shall be, because they work for a credible company, a company with credibility, and they want to look forward and ahead again. Believe me, it was a shock to all of us when our CEO was arrested. And of course, this unsettles and paralyzes teams. That's why I took a lot of time in these recent months, listening a lot. Our employees' worries have been addressed, but also their ideas for Audi's future. And we also took a very close look what are our competitors doing. And by that, I don't just mean BMW, Mercedes and Tesla, I also mean Google, Uber and Tencent. We did look at them and we said, what can we learn from them? Above all, however, we asked ourselves, what do our customers want? Well, I promised some first cornerstones, the cornerstones of our realignment. We prepared this already last fall, and I've mentioned it a number of times. 5 priorities we got. First of all, China as the biggest market, and it's going to stay the biggest growth market for the next 5 years, more than 50%. Second, setting benchmarks concerning cost. Thirdly, to sharpen the brand profile, how to position ourselves, have this implemented in the product portfolio. We have to shape the organization and sharpen the profile there, also of leadership, and be more up-to-date. And fifth, we have to decide on the right technologies. These 5 priorities form the thematic basis, to put it that way. We are laying the financial foundation with the Audi transformation plan. By 2022, we want the program to free up 15 billion euros for future topics and issues. And we got the following title for this: Consistently Audi. Consistently Audi. Consistent. That's the key word, the key term here. With this attitude, we want to apply ourselves to all of the topics within the company in the future, no matter what. We want to do everything consistently. Let me put it slightly differently. In the future, we want only to do the right things and then also do them well. That means focusing. We can't really be everywhere at the same time, and we implement consistently. Design, innovation, customer experience, consistency concerning the brand, mobility, consistent performance, sustainability, network, connectivity, leadership, software, the portfolio, the entire value-adding chain. Consistent also means that there are going to be things that we will not do anymore in the future. Focusing does not just mean that we do things, it's also we eliminate others. And I will talk about this more in detail, the content of the strategy at the annual general meeting. But today, there are some key points that I'd like to address. Consistently customer, that's the starting point of everything. It's always been like this. Now, tomorrow, the day after. It's particularly important. And the Chinese customers are also particularly important. I said it before. China, our priority because it stays our largest single market. Last year, we were once again the most successful premium brand in China. We want to continue to grow profitably and develop products and services that are precisely tailored to that market. And we've also implemented a new steering model with clear responsibilities in the Board of Management, with a significantly greater focus on China in the product development and creation process, and a strong local presence also. Consistently customer, of course, also applies to the other markets. We have revolved around ourselves too many times in the past, too often, getting deeper into technical details that the customers didn't even ask for. We can't afford that anymore. In the future, we will consistently think from the outside in. Our new Customer Advisory Board will help us there. The Advisory Board is the voice of our customers in our company, and it is closely linked to the product development or creation process. With more customer focus, we will increase our efficiency and effectiveness, and we create a unique premium experience for Audi drivers. We want to have the most satisfied customers. And if we want to be the number one in any area, that's the one. We want to delight our customers. The second field of action, consistently electric. We have an ambitious goal. We want to be at the forefront of the changeover to electric mobility. And that is why we are currently reviewing our entire portfolio and ask ourselves, what are we going to keep? What are we going to eliminate? And where are we going to rethink matters? By the end of next year already, we want to have 12 electrified models in our portfolio. 5 of them will be fully electric, 7 will be plug-in hybrids. You could see most of the models at the Geneva Motor Show already. At our press conference, we presented, for the first time, solely electrified cars. And we showed we are serious here. The Audi Q4 E-Tron concept provides a glimpse of the first compact SUV that we have developed on the MEB platform. The series production car will be launched 2 years from now and will provide access to e-mobility for even more people. By 2025, we will further increase the number of electrified models to a total of 30. We electrify each of our model series and develop additional highly attractive and emotive electric cars, like the E-Tron GT. From the compact SUV to the upper class, or top-of-the-line sedan, at Audi, every customer will find the right E-model. My next point is consistently connected. In the future, a car's drive system will be less decisive. Connectivity and the overall character of a model will be much more important. And that is why we are developing digital services with added value. And we also place a stronger focus on our mobility services. In software development, we intend to utilize significantly more synergies within the Volkswagen Group. And of course, 1 billion euros of earnings contribution, we do maintain this target. Step by step, we are creating the conditions for this. For example, the Audi E-Tron is the first model with functions on demand, special equipment that can be flexibly added. The HoloRide startup is a very good example of how we are opening our My Audi platform to third parties. And with a special edition TT Quantum Grey edition, we will test the online marketing of our new cars as a pilot project in May. And of course, we do include our retailers here. My fourth point, consistently sustainable. This topic has been on our minds not just since yesterday. We are clearly committed to the Paris climate targets, in particular the 2-degree target. And later, you'll hear it in Peter Kessler's speech, our environmental and ecological commitment goes back decades. But it is precisely because of the diesel crisis that we now want to tackle this topic consistently. Sustainability is our ambition as part of the society. And at the same time, it's an absolute necessity for future success. Acceptance and relevance of our brand depend on it, and thus also the value of the brand. And that is why we are considering both factors, ecology and economy, into a new steering parameters. Return on investment and CO2 footprint. Alexander Seitz will explain this more in detail later. This indicator is intended to provide orientation for everyone in the company, and thus to strengthen our employees' freedom of choice. Consistently electric, consistently connected, consistently sustainable, and all thought out from the customer's perspective. Consistently Audi, how are we going to implement it? We are going to implement it. We will consistently focus and also omit some things. We will consistently use synergies and consistently pay attention to profitability and consistently strengthen our team. We will make the Audi spirit great again, the one that you all know. We will give our team a shared dream, a shared vision, one goal, a shared ambition. We Audi people want to become a first-class team where loyalty, competence, and trust prevail. A strong community in which the strength of individuals is firmly welded together. A community in which everyone shares the same convictions and values: respect, openness, transparency, and integrity. We want to have more diversity at Audi. More diversity. And by that, I don't mean labels like man, woman, young, old, German, Dutch, assembly workers, engineer. I mean the people behind these labels, the diversity of talents and perspectives, because only this diversity makes a company successful. At Audi, we will become fearless employees, meeting challenges courageously with an undisputable will to succeed. That's what we want. People who remain true to themselves, who question the status quo, people who make courageous decisions and pursue one goal with every action they take: progress. We are striving for sustainably profitable growth. And that's all, nothing else. I was talking about the ski jump earlier. Now, our special ambition is associated with this image. We don't drive down or go down the slope, but up. The ski jump in Kaipola can no longer be used today, unfortunately. So there's a new challenge that we were looking for with an even more ambitious goal. Not 70% gradient only, but 85%. Not a conventional all-wheel drive, but the all-electric E-Quattro. We wanted to climb the steepest section of the legendary Strife, the famous ski run in Kitzbühel. And with Matthias Exter, we found one of the best from our team, putting him in the driver's seat behind the wheel. And of course, the driver's seat of an Audi E-Tron, because this car is a symbol for us, for our start into a new era. And this action shows our attitude: ambitious, focused, and consistent. And the question, of course, is, will we manage it? And I just tell you, see for yourselves.
nutzen vielleicht 60-70%. Das heißt, von der Leistung her sind wir grün.
No, yeah, definitely don't want to stop here. Good luck.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The year 2018 was without a doubt a difficult year for Audi. Markets were volatile on the one hand, and there were macroeconomic challenges that were really severe. In the diesel crisis, we paid the fine of 800 million euros. And we also managed the biggest model initiative in our history. We changed over our entire portfolio to the new WLTP test cycle. Well, I don't like to say it, but I have to be honest. That was a stress test, and despite intensive preparations, we failed. Significant organizational deficits reduced our sales volumes and had a negative impact on our key financials. At the end of the year, we had not achieved the goals we had set ourselves. To put it bluntly, that was a disappointment to us and to me personally. In terms of deliveries, we were 3.5% down on last year, largely due to the changeover to WLTP. That hit us the hardest in Western Europe, where we delivered 14% fewer vehicles than in the previous year. Also in the United States, we aim to achieve more than just maintaining unit sales at the prior year level. At least with our SUVs, we achieved an increase. 57% of our US customers decided in favor of one of our Q models, 10,000 more than in 2017. In China, we were once again the market leader among the premium manufacturers, with more than 660,000 cars delivered and an increase of 11%. China provided the volume push that we needed in that difficult year. This brings me to the financial development of the Audi Group. Our revenue of 59.2 billion euros was close to the prior year level. Negative factors included the volume loss due to the WLTP and the launch situation, but also headwinds from foreign exchange rates. This was opposed to the very good China business and the better product mix. The top SUVs, the Audi Q8 and the Lamborghini, had a positive impact on revenue. At this point, I would like to send my greetings to Italy. Our subsidiary Lamborghini achieved a whole new level of business with the market launch of the Super Euro Super SUV, 51% more deliveries and 41% more revenue than last year. And more than two-thirds of Urus buyers are new customers for Lamborghini. Our operating profit is reduced by special items totaling 1.2 billion euros. The largest of them was the fine imposed by the Munich II Public Prosecutor's Office. Now that, of course, hurts us financially. But it was also important progress in overcoming the diesel crisis. Operating profit therefore amounted to 3.5 billion euros and was thus almost 25%, approximately 25% lower than in 2017. The operating margin of 6% was below our target corridor, and it was below the target corridor. Now, what are these numbers worth? Adjusted for the special items, we achieved a return on sales of 7.9% and an operating profit of 4.7 billion euros. If, like our competitors, we also included the China business in our operating profit, the margin would be more than 1 percentage point higher. Now, I'm sure you're now asking, as the saying goes, is Seitz trying to sell us vinegar as wine? No, this operating performance is insufficient for a proud brand like Audi. It is a clear reflection of our failings with WLTP. We had a full pipeline full of highly attractive products, but our customers couldn't buy them. And that hurts me for the customer. And it hurts me personally as well, because a lot of earnings potential was lost there. Once again, in 2018, we had high upfront expenditure for new technologies and our production network. These are important, positive expenses for our future viability, but will initially reduce our earnings. We were able to offset a lot of these expenses, but not all of them with the Audi transformation plan. We had a 1.9 billion euros list of measures, and 1.1 billion euros had an impact on earnings compared with the previous year. And this shows clearly how much potential there is in the Audi organization. And we will now make consistent use of it. I promise you that. Cash generation remains our strength. The fine of 800 million euros plus a further 400 million euros for diesel issues have been paid. What now remains is a net cash flow of 2.1 billion euros. If you adjust for the diesel payments, the figure is 3.4 billion euros. Once again, we have covered all investments from our own resources, and net liquidity of 20 billion euros is at the previous year's high level. Here too, one could say it's not that bad, but that would not reflect Audi's expectations or the expectations of our owners and stakeholders or interest groups, and certainly not my personal expectation either. In 2019, we will apply all our strength to overcome that low point and get back on track. 2019 will be a year of work, of creating order, and there will probably not be a great reward awaiting us at the end of the year. Not yet. That will come later. In the first half of the year, we will still feel the effects of WLTP. And as Bram Schott has already said, the WLTP second act will also be a challenge. Over the coming months, we will gradually improve our pipeline and we will fine-tune our inventories. At the same time, we will launch about 20 new models. You got an advance impression of them at the Geneva Motor Show, and also yesterday in the evening with Mr. Rothenpiller. In addition, there are difficult markets, currency and raw material risks, with the continuation of high upfront expenditure for the future of Audi. In terms of deliveries, in the first 2 months of the year, we lost 5.5% year-on-year, which was also caused by WLTP. In the course of the year 2019, we expect a push from our attractive young portfolio and positive effects from inventory optimization, and therefore a moderate increase in unit sales. This will, of course, also be reflected in revenue. However, nevertheless, we anticipate only a slight increase in revenue due to the currency headwind. Starting this year, 2019, we are adjusting our long-term target corridor for operating return on sales to 9 to 11%. A brief explanation. We are focusing more on core activities. From 2019 onwards, we will follow Volkswagen's example to obtain a uniform reporting structure, and we will place the management of foreign multi-brand sales companies within the Volkswagen Group. We have therefore deconsolidated those companies, and we have adjusted our key figures accordingly and consistently. This creates better comparability and greater transparency. We will probably not achieve our strategic target corridor of 9 to 11% this year, and we anticipate a return on sales of between 7 and 8.5%. Net cash flow is expected to be between 2.5 and 3 billion euros. So 2019 will not be a record year in financial terms, but we will do our homework consistently, because we cannot continue as before. Audi must become a high performer again and get into the headlines for that reason. And that's what we, as the Board of Management, want to achieve. And that is also what our employees, our customers, and the capital market expect. To achieve it, we need to accelerate the transformation, and we will only succeed in doing so if we establish the change in our organization and structures in a sustainable manner. The Audi Transformation Plan will play a key role in 2019. It is the basis for our successful change. We are using it to finance upfront expenditure for automated driving, for digital services and electric mobility. We are planning 14 billion euros for these areas alone by the end of 2023. And we are releasing the required funds through targeted measures on the revenue and cost side. This requires prioritization, focus and consistency. It won't be comfortable, that's clear. But we are placing the profit zone clearly ahead of the comfort zone. Only in this way will we create scope for upfront expenditure and will secure our operating return on sales target and thus Audi's future. An analysis of our cost and revenue structures has shown that there's a lot of potential. This is why we have tightened our ATP target from 10 to 15 billion euros. 70% of that is already covered by concrete measures. Now, let me give you a few examples of how we are tackling costs along the entire value chain. As you heard, we are now streamlining our portfolio. This will reduce complexity and significantly lower our product costs. In development, we are increasingly using virtual instead of physical prototypes, so we develop new cars faster and more efficiently than before. With cost-conscious and intelligent design, our vehicle designers make a significant contribution to optimizing target costs right from the early stages. We are eliminating so-called historically grown duplicate structures and bringing together what belongs together. For instance, functions that concern the Chinese market. We are deleting the sentence, "We have always done it this way," from the Audi vocabulary. We will be even more selective in hiring new employees in the future. When colleagues retire, we will put the need for replacements to the test. When vacancies become available, we will question them. Is it a job for the future? Do we need a specialist from outside? Or can we make someone from the existing team fit for the job? We need the right people in the right positions. One successful example is the 300 employees from our pre-series center who have been qualified for homologation. I am delighted that our colleagues are now on board in this important future field. Against the background of even more complex emissions and even stricter emission regulations worldwide, this is exactly where they are needed. On the revenue side, we are well positioned with a completely rejuvenated portfolio in the top-of-the-range segment, with our top-of-the-range models. This year, we will follow up with the launch of numerous S models, more models and derivatives for a lower budget. This principle must be implemented in all model series. I see the greatest revenue potential in our electric vehicle initiative, and the excellent feedback on the Audi E-Tron proves us right. I am convinced that the BEV penetration will develop better than was at first planned, because the total cost of ownership, so the cost for the customer over the entire vehicle lifetime, will be significantly more attractive than for a car with a combustion engine. By 2025, we will offer our customers about 30 electrified models, and with our group architectures MEB and PPE, we will leverage unique economies of scale over the competition, and that's a clear USP. China. We have a strong focus on China, and we want to continue to lead in China, the market of the future. In 2018, we were the leading premium manufacturer there. With local research and development and strong local partnerships and China-only products, we can respond even better to the needs of our Chinese customers in future. And that applies to digital services as well. If we think nothing is possible without a smartphone in Europe, that attitude is even more widespread in China. Now, perhaps the most important purchase criterion is connecting with the digital world of our customers. But only attractive digital services can turn a car into a highly intelligent smartphone on wheels. By 2022, we will produce 12 models locally in China. Our medium-term goal is more than 1 million deliveries each year. Another word on the return on investment. We all expect Audi to generate a return on our investments of more than 10%. I'm therefore looking forward to our new strategy, because it will make Audi more profitable and more valuable. For example, in the future, we will prioritize our product portfolio according to its capital value and CO2 contribution. And this means that the CO2 advantage that we achieve with electric vehicles and the negative impact from the worse CO2 footprint of conventional cars will be offset against the project margin of the respective vehicle project. So with electric vehicles, we will actively avoid CO2 penalty payments, hence costs, and each Audi E-Tron sold is valuable in two ways and has a direct impact on our return on investment. But even beyond these considerations, it applies that wherever we place investments and resources in the future, significantly more value must be generated. More products, more return, more premium. Only then will the efficiency calculation work out. Now, what does this mean in concrete terms, in terms of value creation? In dialogue with our social partners, we are questioning ourselves critically. Where should we reduce the depth of production or service provision? How can we increase our productivity? What is the most economical allocation of work and tasks between the plants? In order to improve resource costs and capacity utilization, we are merging model platforms and making production more flexible. And if we do this right, we will ensure future viability at every Audi plant. Yes, we have a lot to do in 2019 and the upcoming years, certainly. A lot, but not too much. It is ambitious, but it's not unrealistic. I'm convinced of the potential of the Audi brand. The transformation will be hard work for the entire Audi team. It will challenge us every day, but I'm absolutely confident that Audi will emerge from it with new strength. Thank you.
As engineers, we love numbers. But how can we use them to make the world a better place? By connecting 9.6 billion people that will inhabit the world in 2050? By driving millions of electric test kilometers? By illuminating the world with myriads of pixels? By committing ourselves to the highest standards? Can we improve the world by accelerating a flying taxi? By saving urban parking space? By charging faster and faster? By reaching the ultimate level of autonomous driving? Or simply by applying four-wheel drive? The answer is yes, we can. But all those numbers are just pieces of a bigger picture. A bright future.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome also from me. Acting responsibly is the basis of trust, and we want to regain that trust. Sustainability has been a key corporate objective for a long time. It means future viability, and Bram Schot already said that. Audi is to achieve a new Vorsprung with sustainable products from a sustainable company. We, the Board of Management, know genuine sustainability, first of all, costs a lot of energy and very often also money as well. But the responsible use of resources is also economically sustainable then in the end. And we've been convinced of that for years. Worldwide, more and more people are changing their attitude. And they're also changing their behaviors with their daily shopping, when taking major decisions like building a house or buying a car, also when investing money. More than $22 trillion worldwide have been put into sustainable investments worldwide. And the trend is accelerating significantly. And we want to convince these investors as well. With human rights, equal opportunities, and the environment, we are committed to high standards. We let ourselves be assessed by ratings, for example. The entire Board of Management stands behind the goal of sustainability. I, as the Board of Management member for Production and Logistics, I speak here on behalf of all my colleagues. And we also do a lot for sustainability and production, and we've been doing it for a long time, for decades in some areas. In a few minutes, I'll give you some examples of sustainable business methods. Bram emphasized that we are committed to the Paris climate goals, especially to the 2 degrees target. Audi is the first premium car manufacturer to have its CO2 footprint independently certified. We are working along the entire value chain on CO2 neutral production and supply lines, closed resource loops, and sustainable products. The 4 rings of sustainability form the concept of all of our actions: reduce, reuse, recycle, and rethink. Reduce environmental impact significantly, reuse resources systematically, recycle raw materials in high quality, and rethink by going completely new ways. The first ring of sustainability is reduce. We want to consume fewer natural resources. The biggest lever here is energy. And that applies to all of us, by the way, industry, retailing, and private consumers. Nearly half of all resources consumed are for energy production. And still it's mainly coal, oil, gas, or uranium, what we got. Energy sources with the well-known risks. Reductions here are particularly effective. Audi has a clear agenda. We will make all our plants CO2 neutral by 2030. And we're expanding this goal, reducing our consumption of energy, reducing our consumption of raw materials, and reducing our transport needs. The Brussels plant has been CO2 neutral already since 2018. We are the first manufacturer to achieve this in the premium segment on a large scale. That makes the production of our E-Tron a genuine role model. And we are really proud of that. Other plants have also made great progress. Here in Ingolstadt, for example, we are increasingly using energy from hydropower, solar power, and also the waste heat of our own factories and industry nearby. In this way, we reduce CO2 emissions by a total of more than 330,000 tons per annum. In Gür, Audi utilizes geothermal energy and solar energy. Europe's largest roof-mounted photovoltaic system will go into operation in Hungary in 2020. This alone reduces CO2 emissions by 6,000 tons each year. In addition to such measures, major measures, we have avoided CO2 emissions of more than 23,000 tons at our 4 European plants alone since 2010. Through consistent energy saving every year, our rail transport from the plants in Germany to the North Sea ports has been powered by green electricity for a long time. We became the first company in Germany with completely climate-neutral rail logistics in 2017. This saves 13,000 tons of carbon dioxide emissions every year. For Audi, sustainability does not stop at the factory gate. In the value chain, retailing is the main customer contact. The first Audi pilot dealerships are already nearly climate neutral. For our independent dealers, we have developed an environmental concept. The Audi Center in Hof is a prime example. The owner there is already using photovoltaic systems, remote heating, and an almost complete water cycle. We also want to reduce CO2 emissions in the supply chain. We have developed a sustainability rating system for our suppliers. It involves a dozen criteria from the areas of the environment and social aspects. By the end of last year, we had already checked and assessed more than 1,100 partner companies, dealer companies on their sites. The ratings are decisive for awarding contracts to the suppliers, to the partner companies, a strong and sustainable signal. Now let's turn to the second ring of sustainability, reuse. Many of the resources that we use remain in the cycle for as long as possible. Water and air, for example. Our factory in Mexico is already completely free of wastewater. Used water is cleaned. We then reuse it in production, for example. Co2 Alternatives is therefore a pilot plant. The other plants are also optimizing the water consumption. For example, here in Ingolstadt, with new technology, such as a membrane bioreactor. My second example is the air cycle. In the paint shops in Ingolstadt, Gür, and San Jose Chapa, this vision has already become reality. By reusing air, we enormously reduce the amount of energy we need. And a sophisticated exhaust air purification system reduces the emission of volatile organic compounds by more than 90%. Reducing emissions. This is how we save energy, and we cut costs. We create closed loops. This is a major topic with conventional combustion engines. They're becoming increasingly efficient and more environmentally friendly. We are also working hard on sustainable environmental friendliness in the field of electric mobility. Take the batteries of an Audi E-Tron. They are designed for the entire life of the vehicle. After that, the batteries still have a large proportion of their original capacity. Now, dismantle and recycle, that will be far too early for that. We are therefore now testing reuse concept for our batteries. In production, my department in retailing, and for other users. These lithium-ion batteries continue to be extremely valuable for energy storage. For example, for green electricity from solar, wind, or hydropower. The third ring of sustainability is called recycle. Worthless waste, that was long ago. We have long regarded it as a valuable raw material. Our goal is to separate by type of waste, recycle while maintaining quality, and reuse innovatively. We are already developing recycling concepts for electric mobility, although we will only need them in a few years. Because elements used in high-voltage batteries such as cobalt, copper, or nickel are very valuable. A battery contains 8 kilos of cobalt, for example. We want to recover it and use it for new batteries. We have initiated a research cooperation with the recycling specialist Umicore. This is bearing fruit. In the lab test, we've been able to recycle 95% of these materials. Aluminium. Audi is a pioneer here, not just with our space frame in the car lightweight construction, reducing consumption sustainably, but we are also well aware of the negative impacts from the production of aluminium. And that is why we act whenever we can exert a direct influence, which is recycling. We separate all waste aluminium from steel in the press shop. Then we press the waste material to save space, put it into railway wagons, so we save money and energy. It is then reused by our partners and by us at the plant. So with steel and aluminium, nothing is thrown away. The complete recycling of aluminium alone avoided more than 90,000 tons of carbon dioxide emissions in 2018, 30% more than in the year before. Achievements like this spur us on, and this is how we come up with new ideas in search of Vorsprung. Rethink, our fourth ring of sustainability. That's the header there. Rethinking means reflecting, thinking beyond the company and acting accordingly. I know economic journalists like to go through the roof, and they're going to experience a green miracle. Here in Ingolstadt, we've got meadow herbs and wildflowers planted on our roofs. Or take our plant in Mexico. We've planted more than 100,000 trees in the immediate vicinity. And at our factory in Münster, we have countless insects flying between large flower meadows and rare varieties of fruit trees. Regular monitoring has shown us the increase in biodiversity there. You will have noticed I can really be enthusiastic about it. We are convinced our sites should provide a habitat for plants and insects. In the world around us, this habitat is becoming increasingly scarce, and that is why we are creating space for biodiversity. Ladies and gentlemen, we as car manufacturers has to do even more for sustainability, must do more, and we want to do it, but we can't do everything just by ourselves. Now, rethinking leads to the conclusion that sustainable mobility or the energy turnaround or climate protection, no one can manage all that alone. We have to do it together. Audi, therefore, has a lot of alliances and partnerships working on exactly that. In a few months, Ingolstadt will get its third train station. It will be directly here on the plant grounds. We've planned and financed the project together with the German railway system, the Free State of Bavaria, and the city of Ingolstadt. It's a very strong complement to cars, buses, and bicycles being used for transport. It reduces urban traffic and reduces emissions. For global challenges, we need worldwide cooperation, such as the Global Aluminium Alliance, ASI. We've been working with a great deal of commitment in this alliance since 2013. A global sustainability standard has been created with environmental, social, and business ethics criteria. Audi is the first car manufacturer to receive the ASI Sustainability Certificate. Many of our activities are not reflected in the financial statements, but we want to contribute to improve our environment. After all, our families, all of us, our neighbors, we all live here near our plants. You can have a closer look at one example later. Right in the middle of the Danube Meadows, there is a former oil refinery. The area was heavily contaminated. We will have 600,000 tons of soil taken out and cleaned. We will return one part of the site, as big as 20 football fields. We are going to return it completely to nature with a holistic concept of biodiversity. We do apply a wide range of new technologies to do this. The result is the biggest reclamation project of that kind in our country. The IN Campus, Ingolstadt's new think tank, for bright minds, of Audi for startups and for scientists. Take the opportunity to have a look around later this afternoon. We're also very proud of the work of the Audi Environmental Foundation. This year, it will celebrate its 10th anniversary. The foundation promotes innovative ideas for environmental protection, ideas from the fields of science, education and society, often also ideas from our employees. Meanwhile, this non-profit foundation has a global network. It helps fantastic ideas to become reality. For example, how we can remove plastic waste from the rivers before it actually gets into the sea, or how oak forests remove and bind carbon dioxide from the air. We have connected many trees, numerous trees, with sensors to find out more about it. I'm particularly fascinated at present by our bee project. 100 beehives are being digitally connected with high-tech sensors. They turn the bees' swarm intelligence into a seismograph of biodiversity and pollution, toxic substances, and maybe in the long term we can also use it for weather phenomena forecasts. This is what rethinking is all about. The Audi Environmental Foundation connects know-how resulting in projects for a better world. Ladies and gentlemen, reduce, reuse, recycle, and rethink. The 4 rings of sustainability. One goal, Vorsprung, sustainability. We have already taken great steps in this direction. By 2025, we want to further reduce the environmental impact per vehicle produced by 35%, compared with the base year 2010. Now, we've already achieved 23.7%. Moreover, we accept greater responsibility, going beyond our own entrepreneurial activities, for the environment, nature, and the society, for a shared future. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter Kössler, and thank you, Alexander Seitz and Bram Schott. Now, before we start our Q&A session, we have to make a couple of rearrangements so that we can bridge the time. During these rearrangements, we are going to take a short look behind the scenes of our first all-electric Audi, the Audi E-Tron. So let's roll the film.
What I'm most proud of is that the Audi E-Tron is 100.0% an Audi. You will see, smell, feel Audi in its design, in its quality, in its workmanship, in its technology. In 10 years from now, we will talk about E-Tron the same we talk about Quattro. It will be in the heart, in the essence, in the DNA of Audi.
I think at Audi we are obsessed with making things perfect.
We go actually beyond what would be expected.
If someone says it doesn't work, it's not possible, we still try.
For Audi, the e-tron is definitely a milestone. It's the beginning of something new at Audi.
The biggest thing in Audi's history in the last 40 years.
We are convinced that electric driving is the future.
We had to incorporate every single bit of knowledge and expertise over many, many decades.
This car is full of surprises.
Like the all-new brake system, air suspension, the first all-electric Quattro drivetrain.
It's a really big step forward. It leads the way to the future here.
It's these moments where you think it's something completely fresh, completely new.
And it was absolutely exciting to be part of that.
So the market is coming. It's just the right time to bring the e-tron.
It is a no-compromise battery electric vehicle.
We have towing capacity, roof rails, a large storage capacity, just like you expect from an SUV.
Even imagine that an SUV can drive like this. That's an enormous feeling.
After many, many years of the work where you can see the result, it's a really special moment.
In the end, we managed to make something which was impossible, somehow possible.
Now, just briefly on the way we organized our questions and answers. The translators will translate any questions asked in languages apart from German, will be translated into the room. And after that, there will be answers from the managing board. To the guests, you have our iPod here in the room. You saw a film before which gave you instructions on how to use this iPod. If anything is not clear, if you don't know how to use this iPod, just raise your hand. There are colleagues here in the room who will be happy to assist you. And since we really want to finish by 12 o'clock sharp, because after 12, after a short break for lunch, there will be further items on the agenda for the afternoon, so we want to really finish by 12 o'clock. And that's why we would like to start with the first question immediately. Mr. Fasse. Oh, did I make a mistake here? Is it Mr. Fasse, or who has the first question? I have a couple of questions, if you permit. Now, you talked about the efficiency programs. That's my first question. And you also talked about a reduction of the workforce, shedding of labor, and your parent company and your sister company, Volkswagen, gave us concrete figures. Now, could you also give us concrete figures? How many jobs will be lost at Audi? What will be the amount of job reduction at Audi? That's my first question. The second question, you said that in China, in the medium term, 1 million cars should be sold. That's your plan. And that would be approximately 400,000 more than today. Could you be a bit more specific? When do you want to achieve this target? And how high will be the share of China in the total sales? Because it's already quite high right now. So maybe you could give us more precise figures here. And then you also mentioned about China that on the managing board, well, I think you want to have more clear-cut allocation of responsibilities in the managing board, to the possibility of a specific division on the board of management or responsibility for China. Do you have such plans? Are you going to install a board office for China? Well, first of all, let's talk about China. Respond to the China question. Mr. Seitz, 1 million cars. That's our target for China, right? Now, we already achieved 660,000 vehicles today. I mentioned it in 2018. And we also assume that the market in 2019 will grow moderately. So it's not going that there's not going to be a slowdown. And otherwise, we might have some difficulties in volume markets, but this is not expected. And our planning horizon extends to the year 2022, and we think that this can be achieved within the planning horizon. Ram, would you like to comment on China and responsibility on the managing board? It is clear that we're not going to comment on speculations, but what we are really examining is whether the functions for procurement and development, whether we have a better responsibility on the board. Alexander Seitz is now currently responsible for China, but we think it's going to become even more important in future. It will grow. So that's something we are considering at the moment, whether they shouldn't be changed. But that's something that we have not finalized yet. No decision has yet been taken. And then to conclude, on development of jobs. Mr. Goebel. Now, development of jobs. I think there are a couple of points which are important in this respect. First of all, we clearly emphasize our employment guarantee by 2025. And it's clear that we understand we have a joint objective. We want to make Audi viable for the future, and that means we have to become more efficient and leaner. And thirdly, we very clearly will also recruit people in future-oriented fields and innovative fields. And fourth, we have an important task to handle. All our employees, our permanent, regular workforce, will also receive further training, systematic training. And Alexander Seitz already talked about the fact that we're going to raise our training budget. So all our employees will be made fit for the future by additional training. And fifth, we will also have to make adjustments in line with demographic developments, just like many other companies, which should be understandable. Thank you. Mr. Hübner? He should be somewhere at the back of the room. Yeah, thank you very much. Alexander Hübner from Reuters. Well, at some points, not only with in terms of the jobs, number of jobs, it's not entirely clear. It's a bit vague what you're saying here, because it sounds as though Volkswagen would move in a direction where things are combined or pooled more strongly within the group. So that means redundancy should be avoided. You don't want to have the same functions in 2 or 3 places at the same time. That seems to be a kind of intention. So if you're saying that you would like to focus more on your own core activities, what exactly does it mean? What are you not going to do anymore in the future if you want to focus on core activities? Could you give us an example, maybe? Now, group synergies. Bram? Well, it's quite clear. It's something that I said clearly before. It's generally the case that we want to combine our strengths and consistently make use of synergies. And I think it's a huge advantage that Audi is a member of a large group. Our cooperation with Porsche will be intensified as well. That's clear, because this is about the premium part of the market. And we also have the MQB, MEB, and with this we can achieve synergies. But only the possibility of using synergies doesn't mean you have them. You have to implement them as well if you have them. And I think we could do a better job there, implementing existing synergies. And I think it's also quite good. I think Herbert Diess made it very clear 2 days ago. It's good that we have to use the force of being a member of a group. Many of these brands in the group have strengths which we have to benefit from. And Alexander Seitz made it clear, if we look at investments for the future, what we cannot afford within the group or Audi is we cannot spend €1 twice. So consistent use of synergies is something that will be even more important in the future than in the past.
Good morning. I also got 2 or 3 questions, if I may. First of all, some more detailed information concerning one statement. HR, personnel, employees, you're quite vague. Can you give us some more detailed information? Night shift, 1 night shift to be eliminated, that was mentioned. What's the status? Any agreement reached already? And then it was about leadership, the leadership level. Can you also give us some numbers there? Managers, executives, how many will be affected, or how are you going to reduce the number there? So much for HR. Wolfgang Porsche made a statement in Geneva saying that he thought it was the wrong decision to take the E-Tron manufacturing to the Brussels plant. Do you agree? Would you do it differently today? What about the next e-cars? Where are they going to be manufactured? And the last point, online marketing, you mentioned this. Tesla, they focus 100% or almost 100% on online marketing. What about your plans there? What's the order of magnitude there for new cars? What kind of online share do you expect? And what about the dealers? How will they be involved? I'll start with the end, the last part of the question rather. Martin, online marketing. Online marketing, well, first of all, the mid and long term, the dealers are and will be the central contact point for the customers. But we do know that customers want to buy online cars or want to buy cars online. Therefore, with the new dealership contracts, we have an agreement how this is going to be handled. So how it is to be connected, online selling and selling through dealerships. And Bram Schot already said it. We're going to set up a pilot project already today, selling online cars directly to customers, but involving and including the dealers. How high the share is going to be, the customers will decide this. But certainly maintain both channels and expand both of them, online and retail. Manufacturing of the E-Tron in Brussels. And what about future vehicles? Where will they be made? Mr. Kessler. We've got the E-Tron in Brussels, right. We've got the start of production, have had it. And I'd like to really thank the entire team in Brussels because it's an outstanding job that they're doing there. We're very proud to have the SOP in Brussels. So the team really prepared very well for that launch and the SOP, and they've been great managing the very complex SOP. The Brussels decision was taken several years ago. We're still very happy with the plant. Further E-Tron vehicles, cars, well, we have a production network and we're going to position them in such a way that we're going to have a proper utilization of capacity in order to safeguard employment at the locations and tap into synergies. And again, leadership level personnel, Mr. Goebe. Well, shift operation or permanent night shift. Yes, we are involved in very intensive but also very constructive discussions with the labor representatives. It's going to be, well, it will be taking some time. It's very important that we really reach agreement here. It's something that provides constructive solutions for everybody involved, all the employees. I'm sure and optimistic that the decisions will be good ones. management, we already offered a very attractive early retirement or pre-retirement program for management. During the plan, the transformation plan, we are going to keep offering good solutions between now and 22, becoming leaner and efficient. Mr. Charles Riley, Great Britain.
Good morning, Charles Riley from CNN. I've got two questions. You said the shift to electric cars will happen much more quickly than previously expected, but there's still significant challenges related to cost, batteries, etc. How can you be sure that consumers are going to respond in the way that you expect? And how can you be sure this is the right moment for such a high level of investment? And my second question is, you said you took a look at what you could learn from competitors like Uber and Tesla. Can you say a little bit more about what exactly you took away from those studies?
Zwei Fragen zu diesem Thema. It's very clear. We get feedback, and we get feedback from the customers who've just started to drive electric cars, and the feedback's been very good. It's not just about the E-Tron, it's a very general reaction that we get. We do see, with our studies, that 100 drivers of electric cars, 60 to 72% are loyal when it comes to electrification. They like it. Okay, there is a threshold to overcome, but once you've started to drive, it's really something that's delightful. When I get into my E-Tron every morning, it's a different experience. And more than half of the customers who've driven E-Trons, they really love to drive these cars. They're delighted by driving it. Okay, the infrastructure, that's definitely on people's minds when it comes to charging the cars. We have to make progress there, but I'm absolutely convinced. Let's take the next year, for example, and look at charging and the infrastructure, how it's been developing so far. Okay, it might move faster, but I think 3-4 years from now, I think we'll see that it's just been teething problems. Now, the feedback that we get from competitors that drive, from customers that drive competitors' cars, or our own customers driving E-Tron, so the reactions have been overwhelming. And the new competitors? Well, we've looked at different things and different competitors. I think it's always good to have priorities. And priority 2 after China was to set a benchmark. We looked at our cost position and we said, where do we sell our cars? So the entire organization, how we do the business, we benchmarked everything, comparing it to Mercedes-Benz, BMW. And what we've noticed with the new competitors, though, is the speed of decision-making, how software adjustments and adaptations are done, and linking different parts of the business. That's what we started to tackle. There's more to learn. That's definitely, they come from a different area, business area. So software people and software writing and producing, that's what we've started, and that's what we expand. We've learned here. Traditional competitors, BMW, Mercedes, well, we've learned a lot from them.
McIlroy, auch dort hinten.
Thank you, John McIlroy from Auto Express in the UK. I have two questions about product. You say you're going to electrify each of your model series by 2025. Do you mean 48-volt mild hybrid technology, or do you mean pure electric? One of the A1's main rivals, the Mini, will have a full electric edition later this year. Can you afford to not have a full electric offering in the B segment? And secondly, with the focus on sustainability, on electrification, and a less complex model lineup, what is the future for the TT? It's been an Audi style icon for 2 decades. Are there any solid plans for a successor to that car when the current generation goes?
Vielen Dank. Diesmal warten wir auf die Übersetzung.
Ich bin von Auto Express und ich habe 2 Fragen zum Produkt. Und zwar einmal, Sie haben ja gesagt, Sie möchten die gesamte Modellpalette bis 2025 elektrifizieren. Ist das dann voll elektrisch? Geht es um 48 Volt Mild Hybrid Fahrzeuge? Wie sieht das aus? Und Sie haben ja auch einen A1, der ein Rivale zum Mini ist. Und die haben ja gesagt, es soll ein komplett elektrisches Angebot geben im B-Segment. Wie sieht es da bei Ihnen aus? Und zweitens haben Sie ja gesagt, dass der Fokus auf Nachhaltigkeit, Elektrifizierung, Reduzierung der Komplexität liegt. Und wie sieht es da mit der Zukunft des TT aus, der seit 2 Jahrzehnten eine Ikone ist? Gibt es da irgendwelche Pläne, dass es einen Nachfolger gibt oder gibt es da keine nächste Generation?
Vielen Dank. Der Herr Rotenpieler lehnt sich schon nach vorne.
Thank you, Mr. Rotenpieler. Thank you, Mr. Rotenpieler. 48 volt mild hybrid. This is not part of completely electrified. This is not what we mean. We mean plug-in with a range, zero emission, more than 40, 50 kilometers, and BEVs, of course. Mild hybrid is not included. So mild hybrid is not what we mean. Then the B platform, well, it will certainly be electrified. There will be a wide offering for this as a flat, sporty vehicle, but also as an SUV. And TT, well, that's a topic which is very emotional to us. We had emotional discussions on it on the board, very much so. There are some people who say, we'll stop it, but I say it's part of our DNA. So we are fighting for it, and we will certainly, in due time, be able to tell you what exactly we plan to do in the future. We want it, because as you said, it's our DNA, and that's what we are fighting for, and I'm going to convince my colleagues in terms of how it can be electrified, but you'll hear more from us when we have more concrete plans. Mr. Hägler? Thank you very much. Mr. Hägler from Süddeutsche Zeitung. Now, once again, on the questions concerning the jobs, I cannot avoid it. So yesterday you announced 7,000. So maybe we can try to talk about the 90,000 jobs at the moment at Audi. From Wolfsburg, Mr. Dies, we heard job reductions by 1/3 in electrification fields. Now, what does it mean for Audi? Now, this ATP, this transformation plan, does it include any forecast concerning the jobs? Anything you could tell us about more specifically? And the question about the focus. Now, this also raises the question of autonomous driving, because a lot of resources were withdrawn from Ingolstadt, went to Volkswagen commercial vehicles in Hanover. So what is Audi going to do in respect of autonomous driving? To what extent are you involved in the research and development for autonomous driving? And my third question, CO2. That is an important topic for you and the whole industry. Now, what's your plan concerning the products? When we talk about these SUVs, they consume lots of resources, weigh 2.5 tons. Do you have any plans that you could also influence the product and its design, i.e. lighter vehicles which produce less CO2 emissions? Do you have any such plans? These are my 3 questions. Okay, let's start with CO2, alternatives to SUVs, Mr. Rotenpieler. CO2 alternatives for SUVs. Now, that was the last part of the question, the large SUVs, whether we have any alternatives, like the ones we showed last night. Now, first of all, I have to tell you that for SUVs, it's not the weight, but the size that matters. And for the SUVs, we have a certain offering, and you all know that. It's very popular. People like our SUVs, but we also have flat and sporty vehicles that produce much less CO2. And Mr. Sander? The structure of our offering and the attractiveness of flat vehicles, this is what we need to emphasize more and more. The customers have a choice. We have both types of vehicles in our offering, and you cannot reduce CO2 emissions via the weight of an SUV. It's because of the size of the vehicle, and we're intensively working on also making sure that SUVs are aerodynamically refined. So by means of making it more aerodynamic, it would become more efficient. But it's the sheer area of an SUV. You cannot eliminate it. It's large. We need flatter vehicles, flat and attractive vehicles, and that would be a major contribution to CO2. And, of course, for each and every SUV, Q5, Q7, at the moment Q5, we also have an E-Tron. We have a Q5 E-Tron. So that is a certain balance we have also in return on investment for CO2. That's why I like the E-Tron. It has profit contribution between the Q5 and Q7. At the same time, it has a favorable CO2 contribution. So it finances helps to finance our CO2 balance. Customers have a choice and the market determines what is bought. Then the second part, autonomous or automated driving, what we are focusing on here in the group. Mr. Schott? Well, as you just said, synergies within the group can be achieved. Now, it's quite clear. Volkswagen commercial vehicles, you mentioned them. We do have a leading role. And what we are doing, I mean, it's quite logical. Because when you think about autonomous driving, it means, one can clearly say, that there will have to be a certain standardization in future. It's not just cooperation within our group of companies, with the colleagues from Volkswagen commercial vehicles or in any other way with Volkswagen. I could also imagine that in future we might cooperate with other parties outside the group. That's clear. If you really have sensors, infrared and radar, if this kind of technology is standardized and becomes homogeneous, and when we consider introducing this technology, then it's difficult to distinguish your brand via this technology. And then, of course, the magic word is cooperation. And as Alexander Seitz said, we have to be present in many different, or we have such a lot of work to do in our company, so it makes sense for autonomous driving to cooperate with the others in the group and beyond. And beyond our group, we will have to cooperate as well. It's going to be very important to get standards here because the investment to be made, the efforts to be made for autonomous driving is very high, and also the standard and product liability issues are extremely important for autonomous driving. So we think beyond the actual confines of our group. And with this, we come to the first part of your question, jobs. HR, Mr. Goebel. Yeah, thank you for this question. Now, we have more than 90, you mentioned more than 90,000 employees. Today in Ingolstadt, we have approximately 44,000, Neckarsulm 17,000 employees. And our biggest task is going to be, since we also have divisions today, where we need more capacity, a future-oriented field, where we have to invest additional capacity, and we have other areas where we know exactly that these jobs will cease to exist in future. So our biggest and most important task will be to give the assurance to our employees and make them feel comfortable with the future job situation. No matter whether you stay with the company for 10, 20 or 30 years, by means of training, we should not only limit our considerations to the individual sites, but the whole Audi group and Volkswagen group. So we should train colleagues. So training is the important word here, so that all our colleagues in our regular permanent workforce are no longer nervous about losing their jobs. We have to give them assurance. We have to make it clear to them that their jobs will be future-proof. There will be new jobs that we will also need in future, and that's going to be our greatest challenge, not only for HR, but for the whole company. And for this, we also have intensive discussions so that within the context of our transformation process, we should be able to do it. Sorry, a question without a microphone. The answer is we will certainly not grow like in the past 10 years. It's going to be our task to also observe demographic development. In Germany, we will have fewer people, so we have to be in line with the demographic development in Germany. And we have to find new jobs which are important for the future, while at the same time, certain jobs will no longer be required or dropped. And the people formerly in those jobs have to be trained accordingly so that they can still work in our company in places where there are jobs. But we can certainly not grow infinitely, but we will follow the demographic line. Mr. Rauwald.
Good morning, Christoph Rauwald, Bloomberg. One brief question on the portfolio, a reduction of the portfolio that was mentioned before, the TT. Do you plan a successor for the present R8? Because the segment is very much under pressure, two-seater sports cars. Will there be a successor for the R8? And then, what is the effect of the WLTP on the results, Mr. Seitz, financial results? And then one final question. Mr. Diess, when visiting the United States, actually mentioned a possible production site for Audi in the United States. Should that happen, would that be Chattanooga, the Volkswagen plant? Or would there be an independent manufacturing site? Thank you. Let's start with the strategic question, successors for icons, Bram. I'll start with the reduction of the product portfolio because I think that was the first question. What we've seen in 2018, the difficulties with WLTP, they were, well, we looked at the product portfolio after that and we said it's too broad and too deep in many cases. That's what we found when we looked at it. And we found that with less complexity, we are able to meet the same customer requirements. So we started a project looking at the efficiency and effectiveness of the product portfolio, and we decreased the engine transmission variance by a level of 27 to 30% without harming sales. And the TT and the R8, the same, by the way. The same applies. We started a discussion, or we are involved in discussions with the sporty cars, and the RS vehicles will need a change towards and into e-mobility. That's what we are presently discussing and taking decisions. The E-Tron GT, a first step. We're going to have it towards the end of 2020. That's the first step in exactly this direction. We have to maintain and keep our sporty DNA. And I think we're going to see in our discussions what we'll still need in terms of internal combustion engines and what we can transfer into e-mobility right away. Well, one thing is clear, we are an emotional brand. And Audi will always have icon cars. Now, remember Geneva and the E-Tron GT? How well it was received, that can be a new icon. It will be one. Yeah, I was just going to say it, my friend. TT and R8, we have discussions and conversations there. We're also looking at volumes because profitability is also something that we need to focus on. But icons are part of Audi and we are still going to have them in future in whatever form. And the middle part, the effect on the revenue, WLTP 2019, Mr. Seitz. Well, since we've got we also had the annual press conference of Volkswagen. They said WLTP had a major impact on the revenue situation 2018. 1 billion was the order of magnitude there. In the first month, we do see that we still have some effects from last year because of what we got. WLTP's second act is going to come in 2019. We are much more better prepared and positioned this year. Yes, there is going to be some impact, but it's going to be much less market and significant than in 2018. And then a possible production site in the United States, Mr. Kessler? Of course, we keep thinking permanently about our production network. Where do we stand? How do we position ourselves properly for the markets that we cater for, that we produce for? That's it's an ongoing subject. So it's not really necessary to mention this additionally. It's a permanent type of investigation or study or look that we take. When are we going to produce what? That's all I can say. And next, Mr. Gu Xingbang.
中文提问，我想问一个关于这个刚才第一个提的问题，我们这个领导在回复的时候说，关于中国有一些问题还没有最终决定，我想问这个问题是不是指奥迪与这个上汽集团在中国的合资公司？另外，还有一个问题就是说，刚才提到中国是这个奥迪2019年5大任务中的第一个，并安排了150亿的这个投资。那么这些钱将会花在哪些地方呢？好了，谢谢。
Good morning. I got two questions. First of all, it's a follow-up question, if you want, on something that my German colleagues asked. You said that there is no decision yet in a number of respects. China is one of the most important markets for Audi, and you said there are many issues still to decide, and there are still decisions in the pipeline. Maybe the new joint venture in Shanghai is something that you still haven't resolved on? Or what's the situation there? So, joint venture in Shanghai, that's one thing. Secondly, you said there are 5 focal areas for 2019. One is the Chinese market. You've said that it's very important for Audi. And for all of the strategies and the restructuring, you've got a budget of 15 billion euros. My specific question, can you give us a breakdown there? What are you going to do where? So which part of the Chinese market are you looking on? Or what measures have you planned and how much money are you going to allocate to these measures? Mr. Seitz. First of all, on the joint venture, one thing is clear. We are very much welcoming the opening up of the Chinese market, automotive market, as a group and also as Audi. We've been very successful in our cooperation with our joint venture partners, and there's definitely not a one-sided decision just taken by us. All of the stakeholders have to be involved in these future decisions. And as part of our corporate activities, it's also necessary to assess all of the possible and new options, also by our competition. And we have to take a very close look at the laws then, the legal situation, which we're going to do with our stakeholders. Mr. Martin Prehm.
Well, you seem to be very reluctant to share job or HR figures with us, but I'll try it anyway. Over the past few decades in the area of Ingolstadt, you actually withdrew all the capacity from the labor market, and now you're saying you have to revise whether vacancies should be filled again. So what are your perspectives for the future development? Because you're saying you're following the demographic line or development, which at the end of the day means that with, the baby boomers now leaving their jobs, you want to use this possibility for reducing your workforce. But what are you going to tell coming generations? Because this is an area which was completely employed by Audi in the past. We had almost full employment because of Audi and its jobs. So what about future generations living in this area? Do you have any plans? How is it going to affect the whole of Bavaria as well? Now, a question concerning our site in Ingolstadt and jobs. Mr. Goebel. Now, I think what's really very important is the fact also when we also look at the past, and we know that these two sites, Ingolstadt and Neckarsulm, they are the backbone of Audi. We realize that, and that's how it's got to be also in future. And we also discussed that there we have very important markets. In China, of course, we have separate issues, and that's an important market as well. Our most important job, however, will be that our backbone, these two sites, should not only get this employment guarantee and protect the sites and make them fit for the future, and at the same time, this employment guarantee, it's not just something, that we wrote down on a piece of paper. We have to breathe life into it. It must be a reality. And it's important for us that all our employees have to rely on it, have to be able to trust that what we are saying is true here, that we do guarantee jobs. So the demographic development must be intensively observed. We have to see how the population develops in these regions so that systematically and in a targeted manner, our permanent workforce, we have to make it entirely clear why training and flexibility are so important for the future. So we have to implement this. This must be concept that we actually live and breathe life into. These are decisive factors for the future, so that not only in 5 years, but also in 10 or 15 years, we can still produce cars in these two sites. And I believe that's the most important task. It's not just a question of discussing numbers and what the minimum or maximum should be. Now, we have to make sure that our employees trust us, that we take these decisions now so that we are fit for the future, so that not only in 2025, but for coming generations, our children and grandchildren will still find jobs at these traditional sites, and they must be made competitive and future-proof. We cannot, save at the expense of our future. That's very important. So, clear statement. Also in future, at these two sites, we will invest in future-oriented fields. We will recruit people for future-oriented fields. Don't forget, more than 800 young people are currently trained at these two sites, and we are training them in completely different jobs now, jobs we need in the future. That's something we need to highlight. But we also have to change and adapt and make sure that we focus on things that are important in the future. Now, I'm going to jump over to the online questions. We get plenty of them. Mr. Felix Page Autocar from Great Britain is asking about electrification of the entire model lineup, but he's asking, what about Audi Sport? The model lineup at Audi Sport, what can we expect there? I'm looking at Mr. Rothenpieler. Well, as I said before, and I'm going to repeat it now, we do have a very attractive offering, and this year there will be various S models that we will be launching. Now, the first step towards e-mobility in the area of sporty models, RS, is the E-Tron GT. That's our first step. Last night, we gave you a sneak preview, a first glimpse of this model, but you saw other models as well that go exactly in the same direction. What we're going to do and have to do is Audi Sport must also become electric. We must have e-mobility there as well. And our icons for the brand must also become electric. The acceleration, to add that, of e-motors is enormous. So you get a nice kick. It's very emotional there. And I think the hashtag of Audi Sport is red, or rather the logo. It could be greener, though, and this is where I see a future. And maybe one more emotional statement with the Quattro. We've really setting example standards, milestones. And electrically, you can manage and control things and steer things even more and have even more of an emotional influence on driving behavior. And with e-mobile, we are going to do that. 2 short answers to online questions. One question being Short Hari from India. What about the market launch for the Audi E-Tron in India? Martin Sander? The market launch of the E-Tron in India, we do plan to have it next year, 2020 that is. That was fast, that was quick, as expected. Philip Lord then, he wants to know about the Q4. Is there going to be an internal combustion version of that one? Still, or as well? Answer? Mr. Rothenpieler, please. I think the range of the Q vehicles on the internal combustion side, we got the Q3, the Q5, it's fixed. The Q4 is in between electrically. The Q4, the EQ4, because of the E concept, we've got more interior space. The Q4, no, it will not come as an internal combustion version. Then next, Mr. Meyer-Fünfinger. Mr. Schott, you and your colleagues, you are mainly looking into the future, which is right and correct. I've got 2 questions concerning the present, though. In your presentation, you said that with the numbers presented, we might have the feeling that we had a company in a crisis. Some said recovery and reconstruction is necessary. What about your take on the present situation? And then the diesel scandal. You said, as far as Audi is concerned, it will never, ever happen again. How can you be so sure? Because when I look at the situation, one problem seems to have been that there were certain structures and their corporate culture that had grown over years, decades, though. How can you be so sure that you can change it in such a short time? Okay. Well, first of all, we got the transformation. We are not living on an island. All of the automotive business is in a process of transformation. We're definitely not immune. So whether you look at Munich or Stuttgart, it's the same for them. Preparing for the future with new technologies and new competitors, well, we all have to do that. And I wouldn't call that a crisis, but of course we got it all in one and all at the same time. We also have some homemade problems. We should have been much more focused and effective. We could have been, and that together with the transformation in the car industry
really means that there is a big challenge. How you characterize it or what the press has been stating, it's up, well, to the press how they state things. If we just manage the way that we've been doing so far, we won't be prepared for the future successful. Madness. One definition is you do the same thing as always and you expect different results. To turn the whole thing around, it means when you need other results, you also have to change your attitude and the way in which you tackle things. That's obvious. Should we, or if we actually continue along the same lines as before, we get the same results. And my colleagues and I are not satisfied that crisis is something like Latin or Greek term, like a new beginning, I think it means when you translate it. More efficiency, more effectiveness, and when you look into the future with new technologies and everything, we have to position ourselves differently, our company. That's the way it is. It's as easy as that. So much for that. Second part, how to avoid a second diesel crisis in the future. Structures are important. I've mentioned a number of things already. The separation of homologation and development, that's what we've done. That's very clear. Golden rules, we implemented them together with Larry Thompson. We developed them together with Larry Thompson. We have a very strong compliance department, and to be honest, now it's really attitude and behavior, respect, openness, transparency, integrity. I think we live it, we breathe it every day. The mood, the atmosphere has changed. Of course, there's always people who are involved, but I'm very optimistic that with the programs that we have in place and the instruments implemented, to be quite honest, partly it is never, ever going to happen again.
Klaus-Peter Köth is our next speaker. Thank you. Now, from a technical point of view, Audi is consistently now focusing on battery electric mobility, so really fully relying on it. So what role are the combustion engine, e-fuels, or the fuel cell going to play in the future? And as an addition, can your suppliers actually cope with the speed at which you are progressing now? Let's start with Mr. Rothenpieler. I believe, as far as electric mobility, e-mobility is concerned, we're setting a new standard also in terms of the sheer range of our offering. Nevertheless, and we all know it, there are a lot of people or customers who travel long distances. And there, in the medium term, we will still need diesel-fueled cars or diesel-engine cars, but we will move from diesel to the fuel cell, and the future will be a plug-in version with a fuel cell. That will be the future, which electrically and with a fuel cell offers a reasonable range, and that will be the concept for those people who drive long distances in the future. Can our suppliers cope with this fast progress? Now, the suppliers, with our conventional technologies, this is not a problem, but as far as the battery is concerned, we have 3 suppliers now, so we have a wide range. 3 suppliers for battery delivery under contract for European manufacturer. We work with LG and Samsung. 1 factory in Poland, LG, and 1 factory in Hungary. Samsung has a factory in Hungary, in China. For the localized E-Tron, we have CATL. That's the company we are working with. And at the moment, and this for PPE, we have now invited bids. We have a tender procedure, and in this tender, other suppliers will then be considered who have not been working for us yet. So this is the well-known strategy that we use, a multi-sourcing strategy where we have plenty of suppliers, enough suppliers in our portfolio that can actually deliver components to us. Joachim Herr from Börsenzeitung is next. Once again, on the WLTP issue or challenge, you said Volkswagen had a negative effect of 1 billion euros, the whole Volkswagen Group. How much of this affected Audi? What was the share of Audi? Then foreign exchange rate effects, what was the negative impact last year and what is the plan for this year? 9 to 11% margin is what you indicated. Is this what you want to achieve in 2020, or do you think it's unrealistic to achieve such a margin? And then on another topic, the FC Bayern, the football team, is now changing from Audi to BMW as a sponsor. What's your position? You have a contract until 2025. Would you like to perform under the contract, or is it actually quite convenient for you with your transformation plan because you want to set different priorities? So what role will sponsoring activities, Audi sponsoring activities on sports or culture, other areas play in future? Well, I think I got a clear sign that our boss wants to comment on FC Bayern, on the football team and our sponsoring activities before we talk about the influence of WLTP and the corridor Bram. I'm from the Netherlands. We are a famous football nation. I myself play football. Now, this contract will be, well, we will actually stay in the contract until 2025, and what happens after it will be decided by people who are in charge in 23 or 24. That's in 7 years. And our cooperation with FC Bayern is a lot of fun, not only for us, but also for Bayern. Unfortunately, we didn't like the result yesterday. What a pity. I mean, sometimes this might happen, but we are enthusiastic about cooperating with this football team. It's a good fit for our brand and our sponsoring activities. So this contract will run until 2025 and we will enjoy it. Which brings us to the part on negative effects from WLTP, foreign currency exchange rate effects and the corridor. WLTP. In 2018, this was already reflected in our figures, 1 billion. I talked about Audi, not Volkswagen, when I gave you the figure, and it was discussed in this context. So it was a significant burden on our results. We also have it in the forecast for 2019, the negative impact of WLTP, but we have a much better handle on it now. We have it much better under control. So we do not expect the same order of magnitude in terms of negative effects. As far as foreign exchange rate effects are concerned, foreign currency effects, because of our hedging transactions, we were able to handle it positively in 2018, and in 2019, 2/3 have already been hedged for as far as foreign currency effects are concerned. 9 to 11% margin corridor. Well, this year, we said it's a year of transformation, a year of change. So it's 7 to 8.5% that we plan to achieve. And yes, in 2020, our objective is to get back into this current corridor of 9 to 11%.
Mr. Stockberger. Three questions. First of all, I'd like to know, it's a question to everybody basically. You put the letter to the employees into my net last week, mentioning a couple of things. You don't want to quote figures and numbers, we know that in the meantime, but maybe a time frame. Mr. Goebel, you stated before that uncertainty on the part of employees is a big problem at present. So maybe it's possible to say at least until when decisions will be taken. And there's one thing where I'd like to get some more detailed information, utilization of capacity or using plant. Now, there's some urgency because when I want to produce a car in 2021, you have to know where it's going to be produced, otherwise it won't work. So there is some urgency for sure. So what about the time corridor for these decisions, in particular when it comes to plant utilization? When are we going to get some hard facts there? And then cooperation with competition, with competitors. So concerning autonomous or piloted driving, what I'd like to know is whether the PPE platform specifically will also be opened up to suppliers from outside of the group. MEB, it's been done now, so that's my question. So starting with the PPE, Mr. Rothenpieler, I think you'll be able to give a short answer. We heard it last night and this morning, the PPE platform of the group. We do use it group-wide. It's a multi-brand platform, and we're going to keep it up. Use it for whatever it's possible to be used for, flat or high-floor cars, but in the group. No, for group companies only. We're not going to make it available to anybody from the outside. But we're going to use it optimally by group companies with lots of different derivatives. Over to the future question. Time frame, time window, Mr. Goebel. So, in the first quarter of 2019, we're very optimistic that by the end of March or in the next 4 weeks, we'll be able to take the decisions together. And as far as long-term utilization of plants are concerned, we'll have to take time until the middle of the year, I suppose. Middle of the year. Okay. Bettina Meyer. Now, if I may, there was this interview some weeks ago where it was stated that the excess staff would actually be tackled, or the excess admin, and I felt that there was really some change to be about here. But this is not the impression that I have today, that there are going to be dramatic changes there. Do you do it behind the scenes? Well, what have you started to do that? In the presentations, you stated that things shall be changed and have to be changed, but it's not quite clear where and what. In Holland, we've got a lot of water, and when you have ducks on the water, they're very quiet on top, but they paddle like crazy below the surface. So, much noise about nothing? No, it's no noise, but a lot of work that we do. There's quite a few things happening. Hydrocephalus would be the translation of what somebody used here as a term. Excess structures. Now, when you keep growing over the years, of course, you add some fat, and of course you can be more efficient there. But there is something else that's quite clear. We do have new challenges for the future, and we have to reduce the fat and develop muscles. I think I said it in Geneva. Developing muscles means that we are looking very much in detail where we got inefficiencies in our company. Processes that don't work well, for example, too many bodies, committees, decision-making processes that are not quick enough. That's what we are checking. Now, at the management level, we see, do we really have a situation where we spend the time on the essential topics, so we don't have to do much ado about that? Looking at the agenda, has everything been critical today? That's what we have to check every day, but we don't need to have much ado about that. And then roles and responsibilities, are they very clear? We have to see whether the high potential talents, are they used or deployed on the right projects? The scorecards, have they been established properly in the company in the mid-run, yes or no? It's not just burning off some fat, it's also taking a look at people who we got in activities and functions that have become less important, that they are deployed elsewhere, trained first of all and then deployed elsewhere. In times like these, when we talk about more operating results, we might maybe also think about reinforcing procurement, whether we've really used all of the potential, whether the working capital is fine. We don't have to do much ado about that. A lot of ado doesn't mean that lots of things are happening. Very often, or quite often, sometimes it's the other way around. I really, really respect the employees, what they do. We've had very constructive talks with the Works Council. We don't need ado here. Okay. Very, very many things happen, extremely many things. Now, when you look at the 15 billion for the transformation, the Audi transformation plan, you have to turn over every rock. Everything is looked at and discussed. But we do it at home, internally, and when we're through, then we tell people what the results are. One more thing. Managers, everybody talks about them, 10% or whatever is what we talk about also in terms of numbers. But looking at the growth of the company and the number of additional managers, looking at that, so we've grown very quickly. And when you add many managers, and I don't want to refer to the quality, it means there are more interfaces, more reconciliation and agreement necessary. And that's something that we really don't need right now. So we've got a horizontal type of business. We need speed. And speed in the end means simple processes done by people with self-confidence. And as far as the speed of change outside, I have to say that developments are taking place more quickly outside. So I have to be quicker inside. Fewer interfaces before decisions are taken. Something else is important. In the end, it's not that I don't need these people. They'll get new roles because, on the other hand, when I say becoming leaner with a management structure, cutting off some of the fat of flab, well, we have to use that to establish muscle. So maybe somebody with a small department might be put in charge of a big project, and that's what we are looking at. And we're almost through. Short answers for 3 more questions.
Nick Augustine, I hope I understood it. Pronounced it correctly. Edward Taylor and Thomas Magenheim.
I'll do this in English. Questions to Mr. Schott. You mentioned going back to Audi's strength, sharpened brand profile, Audi spirit. what does that specifically refer to? What is Audi's strength? And secondly, you said that Audi is asking ourselves, what do the customers want? Does that mean that Audi was out of touch with its customer base?
No, not at all. But what we currently see, ich kann es auf Deutsch machen.
Bitte.
Nein, was wir gerade sehen, ist dass
No, not at all. But what we currently see, and I see it in the new generation of customers, customers are changing their requirements and expectations. What's extremely important is we cannot afford developing cars which do not really respond to our customers' wishes, not only now, but also in 4 or 3 or 2 years. We have to anticipate what customers need in the future. So more than ever, it's important to accurately know what your customers expect, what they need, and what kind of prices we can charge, because we need to finance our future. I said it very clearly also in my presentation. I was of the opinion that in the past it was not always the case, and that we do not have to develop for the development department, but for the customer. And if we, requirements for the future, if powertrains become less important, because at the end of the day, digitalization becomes more important, and private space in your car, the interior of the car becomes more important, then you need to know exactly what needs to be done and what we do not need to do in the future. That's clear, obvious. It does not mean out of touch, but it does mean so many things are changing in the markets for our customers, also regionally, that I believe more than ever we have to think outside in and not inside out. Second question was which one? There were 2 questions. What was your second question? Or was it just one question? Did we miss one? Oh, okay, the strength. That's right. Okay, the strength. Well, I think, and I have a lot of experience, and I saw many companies, I do believe that we have a lot of competent people in our company. That's true. And for the future, we have all of the answers. We can find all of the answers internally that we need for the future. I don't need any external assistance. It might be that in the past, in some cases, we lost the way to finding the right answers, but we have a lot of energy and competence on board in our company now, and we have a lot of pride as well. That's important. Now, Audi's strength, and I've been with it for 1.5 years now. The problem is being an owner of a problem and sitting down together with others, finding a solution. We have the right competence and the right attitude of the people, and that's what we need. And also love of the brand, passion for the brand, and a clear vision that we need to implement. I think that's what I see, what we need. I have a lot of talks over coffee with people on my team, grassroots talks, and the energy that I experience is really great fun. I enjoy it a lot. Well, I'm certainly not at all concerned. Edward Taylor. Thank you. I have 3 questions. Could you give us an approximate timeline for potential talks on whether you could sell out of the China joint venture? When would you review it? Would you have a decision by the end of the year? Could you also comment on the cooperation with Lamborghini? Will there be even further integration? Because your plan for the future was that this would be moved to a different group within the group of companies of Volkswagen. Now, out of the 15 billion that you mentioned in terms of efficiency, could you be more specific? What is due to cost cuts? What are revenue gains? Could you just be a bit more specific and give us the breakdown? Because I'm not entirely sure if it's really 15 billion cost savings or not. Timeline for the joint venture. I think you talked about China, right? Okay, so I'm looking at Mr. Seitz. Well, as we said before, this is something we are going to take a look at in the next few months together with the Volkswagen Group. I am happy about the opening of the automotive market there. No matter what is discussed, we always have discussions that involve our joint venture partner, and at the end of this year or early next year, we will know more about it. Now, as far as the 15 billion is concerned, it's relatively simple. 1/3 to revenue is attributable to revenue, after-sales process optimization for vehicles, sales costs are 1/3 revenue, 2/3 cost-cutting. And the cost-cutting concerns all kinds of costs, whether we talk about material costs, factory costs, development costs, all kinds of costs. So 1/3, 2/3, that's more or less the split.
Gut.
Lamborghini. So cooperation at group level, it's not important where a brand is. The most important thing is how we cooperate within the group. And when you look at the future, drivetrain, engines, transmissions, of course there is cooperation quite clearly with Porsche. And maybe we can also hear something with about procurement and the link between Lambo and Audi. So Lamborghini, 80% of the parts that are bought come from group suppliers, so we've really networked everything, our cooperation, and connected. So they're a part of the network, Lamborghini are, and we do look for suppliers together. Our crisis management is done together, and we also have joined forces for innovation into products, and we use platforms together. And one more thing was said by Alexander Seitz. 2018 was a super year for Lamborghini, 51% plus sales, 41%, double-digit profit. Euros had a huge impact. I think 3 of the customers, out of 3 customers, 2 are new ones who had never driven Lamborghini before. We're very proud. They are very proud. So it's not important where a company is located in the group. It's really we go beyond that. Thomas Magenheim. Finally, the last one. 2 questions. What about CO2 fleet emissions in 2018 and how it compares to 2017, and what you expect for 2019? And then your wording, adjustments along the demographic development. Can you tell me what the potential is for natural attrition between now and 25? What I want to say here, I don't want to use a backdoor asking about the reduction of jobs. I just want to know what the latitude is that you got. Let's start with the demographic line, Mr. Goebel. So what I wanted to mention before, you said everything was so quiet, or has become so quiet. Now, when we talk about level of utilization of plants, permanent night shifts, how to use the plants and where, we must keep in mind that with all of the changes, of course, that we plan and the transformation, they involve people. Workplaces and people, and that is why there is this uncertainty on the part of people. And that's why we have to take a very close and intensive look. Talk to people internally. Talk to everybody who will be affected. So when we have some new realities that we have to face, we have to be on the same page here when it comes to the understanding. Trust is important. People need to have trust and know why we have to take the decisions. Maybe that's the reason why people think we are going too slow here, but the important thing is that we are on the same page, that we have a shared understanding, because then it's easier to take the decision. I don't know what the potential is. I mean, as far as a precise number is concerned right now. But when you look at the anniversary meetings or the anniversary celebrations that I attend every quarter, you see, well, something like 2,000 people attend or actually have anniversaries every year that you congratulate. And we hire 800 a year, and we want to keep hiring 800. So there is a huge potential definitely in the years to come, the next few, because we've got the baby boomers on the one hand, and we have to see how we manage this properly. And the CO2, fleet emissions 2017-18, and the outlook. CO2, of course, it's a huge focus of ours. Our market and brand controller steering, we've really started to focus very much on CO2. 129 grams was the fleet number for 2018. We are going to keep working on this to reduce the CO2 emissions, the burden there, and in the year to come, we are certainly going to abide by the limits. That's our stated objective. Thank you. This brings us to the official end of our annual press conference 2019. Thank you, everybody here. Thank you, everybody who's attended online. For those here, just leave the iPods on the table in front of you. We are going to collect them later. We are going to continue with our program, roundtable talks, the rapid truck, and the visit of the CO2 neutral plant in Brussels. I hope you've registered already. So we've got the gathering points. Should you have any questions, the colleagues here can help you. And I must say, Have an informative day. Enjoy the remainder of the day. And I'd also like to thank not just the board members, but also the organizational team who've set it all up and have made it possible. Thank you, everybody.